Hello, everybody. My name is Kim Heil. I'm the artistic producer and head of casting here at the Old Globe. And tonight is the Insight Seminar for Cabaret. And as always, I'd love to thank and recognize Vicki and Carl Zeiger for their sponsorship of this program. Thank you so, so much. So to my left is this esteemed gentleman who, I know I say this a lot. Many of you have seen me up here and I get all giddy and excited. I am really, really giddy and excited for this guest that I'm going to be talking to tonight. Josh Rhodes is the director and choreographer of Cabaret. You've seen his work here at the Old Globe, beginning with, and I remember this production, I love this production. He was a choreographer on Working. Yeah. Right? And then he came back to choreograph Bright Star, which then went on to the Broadway. We'll talk a little bit about that later. And then he then came back in, I think, 2017 to direct and choreograph Guys and Dolls. Wasn't that was a spectacular production. He does not disappoint. And so we are thrilled. We're so thrilled to have you here, Josh. I can't even tell you, when we knew in the artistic department that you were confirmed to come back to the Globe and direct and choreograph Cabaret, everyone was like, Josh Rhodes, Josh Rhodes. And I admittedly had not worked with him yet. So I was just glad that everyone was excited because that's a good sign. And then I did some research because I was like, I need to know who this person is that I'll be working with so closely. I didn't find a lot about your origin story. There's so much out there about your work on Broadway and also here and also at Oslo and all the Muni, all those other companies you work for. But one thing I did find, which I was like, oh, yay, was a YouTube video of you teaching Bob Fosse choreography. Oh no, was that bad? Well, but I just want to point that out because we all saw Bob Fosse's dancing last year, and we know that there is a very select group of dancers who understand and know his style of choreography. So I was immediately like, ooh, fangirling, like, yay, Josh knows Fosse choreography. And so then it was really to my delight and pleasure when we met for the first time in New York to do auditions for Cabaret. Sometimes as someone who, I'm a theater geek, admittedly, and I look up to a lot of Broadway directors, choreographers, actors, etc. So it is such a lovely surprise when the person I get to work with is not, sort of holier than thou and has airs about them, but instead are so lovely and warm and accessible and open, and that is exactly what my experience was working with you those, I think, 2 or 3 days that we were casting this show together. So thank you so much for coming here tonight and for bringing your show here. So I do want to start with talking a little bit about your origin story because I think that's interesting to all of us. Like, how did you get into this business, Josh Rhodes?
Hi, everybody. Hi. So good to be here. So good to be back. I just love this place so much. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Decatur, Illinois. I was this weird kid that came up to my mother and said, I want to dance. And my mother was like, I don't know. So I just wanted to do this. And in no particular order, I wanted to just be around theater. I just knew as a kid in the Midwest from never being in New York that I wanted to be in New York. I used to paint the skyline on my walls. I was a weird kid. But I just always wanted to do it. I went to school. I went to the University of Michigan and studied it. And go Blue. I went to New York. I was an actor and dancer, and I toured the nation, and I did all of that. And then my first Broadway show was a musical called Fosse. And it was a big to-do, and at the time, it won the Tony Award. In order to be in it, you had to be in workshop after workshop. So I call it my grad program. I was involved with it for many years of just dancing and taking company class every day. The discipline that it took to be in that was quite intense. And it was really the beginning of my Broadway career. Started with that show. That was my first show at the Broadhurst Theater. And my next show is across the street. And don't think that that is not lost on me. It's a very interesting thing. So I then proceeded as a performer. I was in 7 Broadway shows. I had a great career. But along the way, while I was singing and dancing, I would help out choreographers in rooms. I would just go and, we call it pre-pro. In order to get ready for the cast, we get in a room with a small group of people and we create steps and ideas and sort of figure out how we're going to pull this off. And sometimes we invite the music team in, just like a skeleton crew of people to figure out the pre-production of the production. That's just something that everybody does. And I would just help out choreographers. And along the way, a guy named Casey Nicolau, who is
San Diego boy.
Yes, you're right. Yes, of course. The great Casey Nicolau. I went and helped him out and did pre-pro. I had danced in a show with him, and I was just throwing out ideas to him, and he goes, "You should do this." He goes, "You want to be my assistant?" And so then I was his assistant on The Drowsy Chaperone on Broadway. And that sort of like opened the door. All of a sudden, it just was like, the career started going this way. And I was still performing. And I started from The Drowsy Chaperone. I started to get more. And I started to work with him as an associate in many shows. Then I started to get work on my own as a choreographer. And my day job, my day job was Chicago the Musical. And I was in that. And finally, which was Walter Bobby, Bright Star, he called me one day and said, "Josh," Walter voice. He was like, "You gotta move. I cannot keep giving you leaves of absence to go choreograph things. It's time to jump." And he goes, "I did it once. It's time for you to do it." And I said, "Okay." So I jumped, and then I started choreographing regularly, in which my first job out of that was working in San Diego. That was one of my first sort of choreography jobs on my own. So that sort of carved a nice career for me. And I guess I just always wanted to be in the business, not caring how I was in the business. And so I just was like, "Oh, I'm choreographing now. Okay." And then I choreographed Bright Star, which was for some reason a game changer for me, because Barry sat in the back of rehearsals and called me. I got home, and I'd probably been home like a month, and Barry's like, "I need to talk to you." And I was like, "Oh God, what's this about?" And he said, "I watched you. I watched rehearsals, and you're a director." And then he said, "I have a play that I don't know what to do with." And he gave me Baskerville at the White. And that was the first play I'd ever directed. Oh, wow. And so like Barry was one of those people who saw me in the room as a choreographer, being a creative mind around the full concept, and he observed, and I was so grateful, because he could have just observed and just been like, "That's the choreographer, he does what he does," but he saw me and said, "You're a director," and sort of opened up my career as a director. Bright Star, for some reason, opened my career as a director, and I've been directing more and more. I choreographed 4 Broadway shows within that stretch. And then it's interesting, in this fall, I will be a choreographer of my first Broadway musical. I will be choreographing and directing Spamalot the Revival. So I owe so much to this theater for my evolution and for my training. You forget that. I mean, no, you might not forget. I shouldn't put words in your mouth, but like these shows that we get to do here with these reputable theaters that give you time are also helpful for the evolution of many artists, not just the actors, but the people who get to create them. This is part of my evolution too. Like, I get to learn from putting up Cabaret. I get to fail and win and learn from the audiences, and I get that, and I get to pack that up and go on to my next gig. So, life is constantly a school, right? And so I've just been very grateful to the Old Globe for letting me be on this journey, and I feel like it's really, I'm very, very grateful to this place. So that's my evolution, yeah.
I love it. It sounds almost as though you were sort of pulled from your dancer career into this new world of being a creative on these shows. Do you miss the dancing part of it at all?
I miss the dressing room. I miss the silly, stupid, goof-off dressing room. Because we're quite serious on the other side. Because there's so much to get done.
There's so much work.
There's so much responsibility on the other side, which I don't mind. And we have our team and we giggle. And we have our bit of humor. But there is something really delightful about the dressing room that I miss. But I don't miss, believe it or not, I don't miss dancing 8 shows a week. I don't know why. I still feel like I get whatever I need out of dancing for and with the dancers, just enough to explain it, to use what they have. I still get up and try to do it with them every now and then. But it's...
Do you still take class at all?
No. I mean, like...
The thought!
I mean, like, you don't want to see me in class. No, but I'll still take, a Pilates class or something.
Yoga class.
I'll take a yoga class to try to, get the bones to keep going. But yeah, no.
Well, take me through. Okay, so something like Cabaret or even Guys and Dolls, these very, they're known for the dancing in them. What's the first thing you do? Especially these shows that have such a history before you tackle them, right? They've been on Broadway, they've got movies, So there's a lot of pressure because I would assume anyway that you're thinking, okay, this is my take now, so what is it, right? So I'm curious, what is your process?
Well, for dance, I don't do anything at the beginning with dance. I can't figure out what one single step is if I don't know what the basic idea is. If I don't know what I'm going for tonally, narratively. Narratively is a big one for me. I need to know why this number needs to exist. I need to know what feeling I want you to have at the end of it. But it's very difficult. It's very daunting to get these jobs of these great musicals because they're so great. Because we've all seen Guys and Dolls done so well. And we've seen Cabaret done so beautifully. So what's the last musical you want to do? Cabaret. I genuinely did not want to do Cabaret when I first was offered it because I just thought it was too big of a thing to bite. I just it's too huge. It's been done so well. But inevitably, you get excited. I do a lot of sitting around and thinking. I just sort of go, okay, and I let myself zone out with a project. And a lot of times I just get weird visions, and I'm like, that, and then it sort of cracks me open to an idea. I knew Cabaret, I don't know if any of you saw that last revival in '98, which was so spectacular that
Alan Cumming and Natasha Richardson. I saw that one.
Rob Marshall co-directed with Sam Mendes. It's just wonderfully done, beautifully done. So I was like, well, what do you do with that? But I had an epiphany that I thought it's because if anybody knows, the show definitely has its demise. It tilts towards the end. But I thought instead of starting in the dumps, I thought it might be really challenging and wonderful if I treated these people as really talented beings. These people love their art, and their discipline of art helps them survive this dark time. So what does that do to the play if at the beginning I invite you in and it feels as if how could this possibly go wrong? And so I thought there was something to that for this that I thought would also be uniquely me, being a director choreographer. And so what I do before I choreograph a single step is I sort of construct the structure of a number. I think of the structure of a number and the structure of the show. Sally Bowles, the character, the lead female character, has a really interesting, she's loaded up with numbers at the beginning of the first act. And it's and I sort of had to go, why? What, where, and why, and how does I do a choreographer give you a variety of her when all she has at the beginning are numbers? And so there's this number called Don't Tell Mama, and all I realized I wanted to show you was her ambition. And so I wanted this. I told my associates, I was like, I want the dancing to change composition every 8 counts, which if you change composition, like formations are composition. So like if I told all of us to go into a diagonal and then now go to a V, now go to an X, now go to a square with a hole. Like if I told you to do that every 16 counts, we'd all be running around like crazy. But I liked that. I thought it had that sort of Berlin coked out kind of vibe to it. You know, that it's this sort of like, and it shows her ambition. So, and you don't need to know this, but like she comes out and the 4 ensemble men who say nothing are just standing behind her with old-fashioned flash bulb, flash, you know, the bulbs inside that metal bowl. So that, what? Thank you. That's exactly the word, parcan. So they're inside that. So that I thought that that's like her vanity, her need to be a star is what carries her through the show and inevitably makes all of her decisions. Like her need to be a star got her to Berlin and keeps her in, I don't want to give it away. And it's also part of her, it's part of her great success and her demise. And so you don't need to know that as an audience. It'll be a delightful, wonderful number. But to me, what it means is I'm setting the track for her ambition and what she wants. She wants to be famous at any cost and at any speed. And so I thought, how do I make the most of that number? Whether I hope you enjoy it, but what I'm hoping is you get a grip of her backbone a little bit. And I think that's actually helpful. And then in her second number, you also get a very different Mein Herr. Boy, Mein Herr is a tricky one, because didn't Bob Fosse sort of mutilate that in the movie? I mean, how do you touch Liza Minnelli and those cane back chairs and those camera angles that you die for? I'd love everybody to get low so you could watch the dancers, but we can't do that on theater. In the theater, there's no camera. So, like, that is just so daunting. But then I was like, well, what if I did the opposite? What if I put her way up in the air and everybody else way below? And so you'll see. But like, that was actually me sort of thinking of how to make her arc and her arc for you different and have it grow, and how can me as a choreographer and a director help you experience that? Even if you don't you'll sense it, you'll feel the growth with that character, and you'll start to get to know her more. So anyway, that's a weird way, but that's the world I live in my head all the time.
We also had conversations about the casting of Joanna as Sally Bowles, and I'd love for us to just, share a little bit of the thinking behind that.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like when you look at casting, it's like you sort of think some stories you want to sort of figure out where is the inclusiveness of this story? Like, how do we open up this story to many types but this is a story about Nazi Germany, which is, we all agree, is sort of a white problem. Like that is really I just sort of said flat out, I was like, I don't want to see anyone other than a white person play a Nazi. I just think that is sort of needed for this story. Yes. Just fundamentally helpful, right? Because otherwise you have too many questions going, well, are they oblivious to what's going on? Right. So I was like, okay, that's that. So then, but if you look at the story, the two outsiders to me are the MC and Sally. The MC comes from another plane altogether, and Sally is literally an outsider from London, she claims, but I think that accent is as fake as can be. So who knows where she comes from up north. But that gave us an opportunity to go, okay, how could we see this? And found this amazing actress. Cannot wait for you to see her. But it's funny, then it sort of led to research, and in this same period, in Berlin, Josephine Baker had one of the largest clubs in Paris. Was one of the most popular artists in Paris, France, which was the juggernaut of culture. All I need is, like, we call it the sliver. All I need is a sliver, and then I'm like, I get why Sally got on a train and went to Berlin and said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to have my own club. If she can do it, I can do it. And Berlin doesn't have that. And I'm going to give it to them. And then there's a sliver of the history where, and this is what me, forget, because we all know, like, oh, when Hitler came, all these things happened. But there was a time, there was a sliver when anything was possible in Berlin. The legislature was like, women were coming to power. There were Jewish people in power. This was not, once the Nazis took over, it was a very different thing. But we just kept reminding ourselves, this is the sliver before. This is the sliver. So all these people on stage are living with the great possibility of a better tomorrow. And you can kind of, after the inflation that they went through and after the demise of World War I, they actually were thinking maybe we'll become a democratic state. So you have to give them that grace that they would actually live there. And so it just became a really exciting place to create the show and to put our actors in. And then how tragic that you know that none of these people belong in that world very soon. Within 3 years, they really don't belong there. And they would have to all find their way out in some way, which I think is more tragic and more about sort of the American experience too, because I think you see, when you have that sort of inclusiveness, I think we see America in it. And we're able to sort of talk about this as what we're living through right now. Like, what are the dangers of us being complacent to this sort of behavior now? That's why we do theater, right? Like, that's why we all come together and we watch characters fail so that we can learn how to not fail. Like, that's why we crave this art form. And so that's why we tell this to the actors who have to play the despicable characters they play. I was like, no, you have to. And to be crass, I say this to the actors. I say, someone has to step in shit. But that is my crass phrase of, like, if you don't have that, what do we learn, right? Like, we have to watch someone mess up. And sometimes it's hard for the actor to know that their job is to be the one who messes up. Yeah. And this is a roundabout way for me to talk about this, but it's a really exciting show. And it tells the story so beautifully that it's an endless amount of possibilities of how you can tell it.
Yeah, and actually a particular line that the MC has, in here, life is beautiful, right? And I think in previous productions, there's a certain irony to that because life isn't really all that beautiful in the Kit Kat Klub. But in your Kit Kat Klub, life actually is beautiful.
Yeah, there's, if anybody's toured, have you ever like toured a friend who's either in a Broadway show or in one of those old theaters where they're doing something really nice, and you tour and you go, oh my God, this place is a dump. I mean, here's the secret: Broadway houses are gorgeous, but backstage it's awful. It's just awful because they spend the money on what the audience sees, and everything else is an absolute dump. And it's dusty and dirty, and there's someone's gum that's been sitting there for 3 years. It's just really disgusting and lovely. But so I told everybody, I said, listen, when 9/11 happened, alcohol sales went up and nail polish and cosmetics went up. Because when we feel like we're in the dumps, we put polish on it. We put whatever we can to make ourselves go, okay, I got to face another day. So what do they do at that club? They slap another coat of gold paint on the trim, but underneath there's nothing there. There's nothing there but rot. So as you'll see, Tiana Bayalatz, our set designer, who's amazing, it looks very finished. I don't want to give it away, but she's created a set that the goal by the end of it is, you'll see sort of at the end of Act 1 and as we get to the end of, like, when she sings Cabaret, it's actually standing on very few pillars. But our goal at the beginning is to envelop you with it, make you feel comfortable with it, and then by the end, we flash light through the whole thing, and it's like a skeleton of nothing. And it's nothing there. So all that you go like, but it was so glamorous. And you're like, but it was actually hollow. So her concept is sort of having, we call it the ruined wall in the back, and we have the glitz in the front. And by the end of the show, you see more of the ruined wall than you do the front. Because the magic of lighting is you see whatever we light from the front, and by the end of the show, Corey Paddock, our lighting designer, lights a lot more from the back. And this is this little tricks we do, but it's to make the show start to feel more and more hollow, and that the club is actually like not even there. It's not even a real thing. So that's why I sort of thought there's something wonderful about rented glamour. You know, I think there's beautiful beaded gowns, but I think that these are the same beaded gowns that they keep resewing, and there is a flash to it, but I think it's all just temporary, and it's all just for the audience. But then they all have to go home and figure out how to like keep their apartment warm. You know, that there's a difference. You know. I just think there's something wonderful about the juxtaposition of people's lives and theater, and its fake glamour, its faux glamour, what we pull off with lights and a little bit of glitter.
Yeah. You know, you talked about how you started off as a dancer, but the way you talk about directing, and particularly like just the moment you described right now about lighting, and these are the tricks, right? Well, those are not tricks that a person walking in would know, right? That you obviously have the experience, but you also have the eye, and you didn't go to directing school. So how did you pick up on all of that stuff? Because having now watched you in rehearsal, you find storytelling in moments that it's almost like trickery. We don't know that you're telling us a story, but you actually are, with the lighting, with, you know, how furniture is moved on stage. How did you develop that skill?
I don't know. I don't know.
Just raw talent.
I think I've always been a storyteller. I've always been a space cadet. I've always like been up here thinking of things. I feel like I have a great responsibility to the audience. Like I say this to the actors all the time. I'm like, I have to look out for the audience. I don't think they got that. Or I say to the light designer, I say, okay, I sat down in my seat. I don't know anything. What is that? And they look up and they go, oh, it needs more light. I'm like, I think so. But I think I have to sort of look at the show for the audience's viewpoint.
Yeah.
And so I'm constantly worried about what you get from each number. And I hate empty calorie numbers. I want you to like get something, even if you don't know what it is. Like there's a weird magic trick we do in Act 2 with our MC where he sings this number. But I think there's something when we're so low, and when something like the Nazis are coming, and you're a queer artist in a club, how do you cope with the inevitable of what's to come? That you're going to lose your life force of this art form. What do you do but just float away? Like sometimes when you're really blue, don't you just kind of wish you could take your head off and live head free for a second, so you're not. And so you'll see that's where I was thinking in Act 2. When that moment comes, you'll be like, but I feel like that is story. Even if you don't know what it is, if you're like, that's so odd and so weird, you're getting a little bit of what that character is going through and what these other characters are going through and how they're feeling in the middle of this, because they don't have any text. The MC has no text. Well, I'd say that. He has no narrative text. He's just sort of like an MC. But there is an arc there for me. So to me, it's about always finding out how I can squeeze as much story and as much intention out of every moment and every transition, because you can't waste a moment of your time. Every single beat needs something to follow through. I don't want to black out and have you look at the program. You know what I mean? I don't want you to be thinking about what you're going to have for breakfast tomorrow. I want to get you. Once I get you in that seat, I'm not happy until I have you. So that maybe is where that comes from.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. It's thrilling because I think that, I love what you do, and I don't want to give anything away, but I love the choices you make. And there was a particular moment, without giving it away, in a song, not probably the one you're thinking of. But I know, I'm sorry, I'm really setting this up. But and it had to do with lighting Joanna. And you said, well, you know, she needs to do this, X, Y, and Z. And I went, oh, that's what that is. Like it really was like so mind-blowing to me. And I'm sure to you, you're like, well, of course. But to audience members, it's those things that keep us coming back to the theater, right? Because we love to be surprised. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, many of us have probably seen multiple productions of Cabaret, but I am telling you, you have not seen this one. But I do want to open it up to questions. We have such a large crowd that I imagine there are some questions out there. But Josh, you know, given that you are sort of a magician with these shows that have had a life before and now you're breathing new life into them, what is on your bucket list?
Here's the problem. I'm not good with bucket lists because every time someone comes to me with a show, for like a month, I'm like, oh, what am I going to do with that? But then the ideas percolate, and I'm like so thrilled that I get to do it. So I'm a terrible person for that question because I'm always so sure that I'll never come up with another idea, and then another idea always comes. But so I don't know.
But would you say that, I mean, your resume obviously is quite varied. I mean, you do have this, I mean, Cabaret is not a comedy. It's quite serious, although there's levity in it. But there's these very dark themes. And then you have Spam-A-Lot, which is like high comedy, right? So it seems to me maybe there's like another direction. I mean, honestly, like I was thinking, like for instance, a play or a musical that everyone's done, and everyone has a certain version of it in their head that they're like, that's what you expect of it. That I'm now like, oh, I'd love to see the Josh Rhodes version of this. Is a chorus line.
But I would start with a month going, what am I going to do that Michael Bennett didn't do? You know, but then I'm sure somehow I would crack it for myself. But yeah, but I would have to do some serious meditation to be like,
well,
like, what is it
want
about?
to?
What is it actually about? So that I can be like, oh, we need this. Yeah. But it's such a good show, right? Like daunting, but fun.
But
fun.
to that point, though, so you know, especially Cabaret, which not only has a theater history but also has a film history. When you think about the choreography of that, and you clearly have the Fosse experience in you. What are you thinking in terms of, the style? Should I evoke Fosse? Do I borrow some of those signature moves? And I'll tell you, this audience knows a bunch of those signature moves because of what we've seen. And so, I'd love to know.
You're going to see some signature moves, or whether they're signature or not, it's what I was trained in. I can't, my body does it, so I can't help, and it's fun to pass it on to the younger dancers in the show. They're like, what is that? And I'm like, oh, it's a dance step from the musical Big Deal that he did in the 80s, you know, and it's from a number called Big Noise from Winnetka. And they're like, what? But like,
they didn't see dancing.
They didn't see dancing, but I have so much of that in my body that inevitably it comes out. But the goal is to package it I would never put everybody in caneback chairs and do that because I wouldn't be able to do anything different. I wouldn't be able to do anything different, so that's why you'll see it's just completely staged very, very different.
And then if you did chorus line, would you like pay homage to Michael Bennett? Or
Oh, probably. I mean, I think I probably would pay the most homage to him in the finale. I think there's a point where you want.
Sure.
I think that's a thing where I wouldn't want to deny the audience that thrill of that. I mean, you'd have to sort of allow that.
Yes.
I think the audience deserves that.
But Cassie's solo.
But Cassie's solo could be
whatever.
Dancers dance so differently now.
Yes.
It's the technique.
Bodies move
Technique
differently.
changes. And it's my technique that I was trained in is so different than the technique of young people now. So I have to constantly find things on their bodies because they train differently. Their cores twist in different ways than mine did. So it's sort of fun, though. You just sort of like just be open to it and go, your body does that. What if you do this and that? Yeah, it's exciting because young dancers can do so much now.
Maybe that's what it is about you, Josh. You have like a fresh take because you have this eye that no one else has, but you're also able to sort of preserve what we all love about what that show is. Yeah. And so, yeah, well, if someone offers you a chorus line, would you just think about it for a moment? Because I want to see it.
That would be an interesting one to tackle because it's a classic beyond classic.
Well, that's what I mean. And yeah, but now I'm like, oh, you know who could do it? Josh Rhodes. Okay, I'd love to open it up to questions. I know they're out there. Okay, gentleman in the beret.
Okay, so you talked the remark earlier about
auditions. Okay, hang on one second. Sonia's going to hand you a mic so that everyone else can hear it.
You remarked earlier about auditions in New York. So a show like this, do you have auditions in multiple places, and how is that decided, and what is the format for that?
Well, Kim tells me where to go. But yeah, we have auditions in New York, and the majority of everybody's from New York. And then we have auditions here in San Diego. We have local people in the production here from San Diego. Yeah.
Generally speaking, it's usually New York, sometimes LA, but New York most of the time.
Did we do LA?
I did an EPA. I did a general EPA.
I wasn't here for it, so that's why I don't remember. But you're right. You did. So LA. Add that one, LA. Yeah.
I had the privilege of seeing the show on Saturday night, and you're talking about like you had to give some of the Fosse experience to some of the young dancers. And I'm not giving anything away. The end of the show, my heart. But there was some strange audience reactions on Saturday night.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a generational gap?
I don't know. I thought the same thing. You know, I don't. There are crazy statistics of how many young people don't know about the Holocaust. That's you don't even want to know. Which is again why I'm like, thank God we do this and grab your young friends and bring them. So I think it's interesting. The one thing I've figured out is that I will never understand how people cope with uncomfortable situations. And so I just have to chalk it up with strange things come out when uncomfortable conversations are started up. And I think some people don't know how to quite deal with it or take it in.
It didn't, we were both there and it didn't sound like an uncomfortable laugh.
Or in denial of what it was, or not able to take it in. I don't know.
Not giving anything away. It's just that some people's reaction didn't feel like an uncomfortable reaction, and I was just wondering if it's generational gap that they didn't know what was going on.
I don't know. I guess I wasn't able to interview them after, so I don't know the answer. But I will say that like every audience is different. Some people see everything at the end. Some people say, you know, what ending? You know, but everybody's different. You know, it's and that's the marvel of what we do, right? That it's not a camera. It's not a camera with the shot that I decided you take in. You get to take your experience in from over here, down there, up there. You get to look at that entire palette and decide what color to take in. You get to do that. So it's a little bit of like, I can't control everything the audience experiences. And sometimes there's a reaction that I go, huh, that's not what I would have thought you would do. But you'll see. Well, just if somebody, a lack of reverence for a moment. I think that some people might just, I don't know, honestly, of why you would not sort of take something like that in. But I don't know. Also,
preview audiences are a mix of folks.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But talk to me after and see what you think. You can tell me after. Yeah.
There's a gentleman, with the raised hand over there, please.
So, do you see yourself transitioning to film or television, since there seems to be more in TV that are dancing as well?
Over the pandemic, I got to direct my first film. It hasn't been out yet. It was a musical. I really liked it. I mean, I liked, here's why I liked it, is because what I just said, is that I have to do so much work to try to make sure you're getting the story. I have to make sure the lights are doing this and make sure you're following that. And in film, I just show you what to look at. Oh my God, I loved it. And if and if the dialogue is a little long, you just cut it.
Can't do that in theater,
it's
right?
Awesome.
We had another question in that right there, Sonia. Yeah.
You were talking about how important it is to you to grab the audience immediately. And in this show, you're blessed with one of the great opening numbers in the history of musical theater. What do you do? Everybody knows that. How do you change it and welcome people in?
Oh boy, how do I change it? I guess I just, it starts with sort of a concept for the show. Like, I have a concept. You're going to walk in and there's going to be a coat hanging up there. I'll give it away. It doesn't matter because it's there for you to stare at. But that is actually my concept for the entire show. So it is actually the in for me on how he enters. It's how he does that. It's how in many transitions you'll see coats coming off of people. You'll see people awkwardly taking people's coats. But that is a guiding principle for me. And so that led me in how we open the show. So my Willkommen starts with that coat because that's how I knew I wanted to end the show. So that's sort of where we went. So a lot of it is that time when you say, what do you do? Well, I sit alone and think about it. And then once you get a vision for how you want something to end, then you go, okay, so how do I set that up? And it dictates the form a lot throughout the piece, and particularly the opening number. Yeah.
You talked about some of the classics, obviously, that you worked on. How do you feel about working on totally new pieces?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I have some, luckily, I have some new pieces that I've been working on. They're harder to get on because audiences don't know what they are. You know, you say the title and they go, I'm like, you don't know it because it's new. It's new. So, and sometimes it's just, but it's really fun, and it's like what Bright Star was to me. That was such a special experience because this theater company gave us time, and new pieces need time. And they gave us workshops in New York. They gave us the process here. Then we had a process before we came to Broadway. Like, everyone goes, how did you make that all of that work? And I was like, time. Quite honestly, money and time, because it's not cheap. And theater companies like this that actually support that, I always like, how do you have the audacity to do new pieces? Because they're so expensive, but they're so great, and I love working on them, and I hope to work on many. And that is the real goal, honestly, is to create new work. But also, it's fun to do the classics as well. But I think I would not enjoy it if my year was only stuck in the classics.
But isn't it true that Cabaret was new even once?
Yeah, and that's why when you look at it and it's so good that you want to throw something at them and say, how dare you make something so wonderful? I mean, it's so hard to make a perfect musical, and boy, oh boy, they made one. It's just spectacular.
Well, Josh, you are amazing. And thank you. Thank you so much.